stereotypes obviously affect how we interact with each other, because we create narratives that may or may not be true and then treat people based on that narrative. So of course it's a problem. One of the biggest criticisms I get is that I cannot make generalizations about entire generations. Of course you can. Of course you can, because we are products of our own upbringings. And so there's a group of people whose worldview was formed based on the experiences they had when they came of age. In the case of millennials, they came of age at the millennium. They're the first generation to have cell phones and social media ubiquitous in their lives. The baby boomers came of age in the 60s and 70s, where you have the Vietnam War, you've got Richard Nixon, a massive cynicism of authority figures, and a rebellion to their sort of parents' sort of just work hard sort of and you'll do fine mentality, and became much more selfishly oriented. We know what happened in the 80s and 90s with the rise of mass layoffs as a business strategy, rank and yank, shareholder supremacy. This is all the product of the 80s and 90s. But we can absolutely make generalizations, and many of them are true. You know, our grandparents who may have lived through the Depression or the war, they're miserly and frugal. Well, there's nothing wrong with them. It's because they lived through the Depression and the war. So it affects who they are. So the most important thing is, instead of criticizing someone because of their worldview, because there's a lot to criticize up and down, is rather to have empathy, which is to try to understand that how one generation grew up is different to how we grew up, and to factor that into or filter that through the way we treat someone. Every generation has liability and has great weaknesses, and every generation has massive advantages. And this youngest generation, unlike previous generations, is way more accepting of other people who don't look like them or sound like them. They don't care what your sexuality or gender identity is. It's just a big non-issue. And it's got nothing to do with liberal or conservative or where you're from or north or south or whatever that stuff. As a generation, it's just not a big deal, right? They're much better at personal branding. They understand the importance of brand way better than, you know, older generations think brand is your logo, you know? And they're also talking about doing things with purpose. Now, it's very often said that millennials want to work for an organization that has a sense of purpose. Every generation wants to work for an organization with a sense of purpose. Millennials are just loud about it. Older generations just suffer in silence. And I applaud them for that, because what it does is it's part of the reason that so many companies are becoming purpose-driven or pretending to be purpose-driven, is because of massive pressure from an entire generation. So I think empathy is king, and instead of criticizing, trying to understand and recognizing that not only can we teach them, we can also learn. Both ways. Both ways.